Good morning, everyone. As always, I'd like to thank everyone who's joining us today via Oz Arab Media's live stream, and to those who are tuning in via Oz Arab Radio. I'm Joseph Najjar, and today we are joined by the global CEO of Tender Loving Care, Mr. Yasser Zaki. Now, TLC is an organization that assists people in a wide range of areas. For example, people who are mentally handicapped. Not too long ago, the organization opened up a cafe that employs people who are mentally handicapped to give them the sense of a normal livelihood. Mr. Zaki has joined us today to further expand on the services that TLC provides. Without further ado, Mr. Zaki, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm brilliant. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. And good morning to everyone.
We're very glad to have you today. To start off, can you explain to us what services TLC provides?
So TLZ has quite a global platform in 7 different countries actually, and it all started from the health area of providing care for people with disability, and then it expanded into technology, F&B, and travel, accessible travel, and it's all around supporting people with disability to gain employment, or to have accessible travel, or to receive activities within Australia that can help them to be as independent as possible, like day programs, accommodation services, short-term accommodations, and respites. And there's a huge focus around the skills development aspects for us and how a person can then live a life moving forward and improving and delivering on their aspirations and goals.
It's very noble work. What is it like for you personally to lead a service provider that does such important work to the community?
It's an absolute pleasure. It's never a tiring moment when you see that you're achieving something. We face challenges. We just came out of the pandemic, which no one talks about much at the moment, but it was challenging when we had to wake up every morning and making sure that people are receiving services while there's high risks involved and shortage of staff and all these challenges that we've all faced. And the one thing that kept us going is looking at our participants and the people we support and seeing the importance of the work that we actually deliver to them. And that just keeps you motivated every moment of it.
You mentioned the COVID pandemic and how it affected TLC. How exactly did it affect it per se? Because obviously TLC, there's lots of face-to-face interactions involved in your work.
Absolutely. So it started from very short notice on having to shut some of our programs, given the risks involved. At the same time, there was a huge, borders were shut, so that we were not bringing new workforce hands. That created a massive gap in the service. So while you're in a pandemic where people need more services, more care, more support, we were not able to bring them and have more employment. So there was massive shortage of staffing. And then we also had the early stages when anyone that got sick with COVID had to isolate for 14 days. That meant that every single person, every single group, that if one person was sick, everyone had to sit at home for 14 days, and we had an obligation to replace that. Personally, I went out and supported participants. There's a lot of so when we had a participant with COVID of staff, rightly so, had the fear of providing that level of care. So we had to have a contingency plans where we had people that are trained on how to deal with contagious diseases to go out there as a backup plan. Those are all adjustments to the way the business was running. That was not something that we had to do. I personally went out and supported clients with COVID cases. It was a tough time for everybody, and we just had to step up the mark and deliver. And we have delivered significant care and support, and we actually provided a lot of support for the government as well, where we partnered with them, being a preferred provider that stepped up and provided care for people that had COVID. So that changed our modeling completely, by the way. So now we have contingency plan for all the care that we provide. And we have a massive business plans around diseases, environmental risks, and things like that. So we are ahead of our game all the time.
Obviously, as you just discussed that scenario, being in your position, you do need to make a lot of tough decisions, such as the ones you would have had to have made during the COVID pandemic. Are there more instances where in your position, you need to make difficult decisions that might hinder the organization's ability to help people?
No, so Tender Love and Care has always started based on one principle. We are going to do the best we can to provide care for people in a manner that delivers aspirations and goals. So everything we do from a business perspective is actually to deliver that. So even though we grow, for example, international, we're in 7 different countries, and we work with governments, we consult governments, and we bring amazing standards from different countries, mix it up with Australian high standards, and bring out the best of the best every time we can. And the reason we've done all of this is we had to make sure we identified the fact that you need to be a sustainable business to provide care for people. And changing the narrative from the old school thinking of if you're doing business, then you're doing you cannot care for people. That's not what I believe at all. I believe that if you want to help more people, you need to run a healthy business, because that only means that we're expanding, and that means we can help more people in a substantial way and sustainable way. So that's key to our progress, and it's key to our success.
You mentioned TLC is operating in 7 different countries. Besides Australia, what are the other 6 countries?
So we're in the UK, the US, the Philippines, Dubai, in Turkey and Egypt.
Okay. Um, Obviously, since it operates in many different places in the world, how do you envision TLC growing within the next 10 years?
That's a brilliant question. So I'll take 2 steps back, and we thought of how can we position tender loving care instead of going out there and competing. And we hear a lot about competitions. We decided we can't compete when we care for people, right? We collaborate, because two forces are much better for the community than one. So we decided that we have to position ourselves slightly different from anyone else that provides services, so we can actually collaborate and give bigger services for the people who support of the greater community. And with that, we adopted what we call a blue ocean strategy. So it's a very educated approach to how we position ourselves. Hence why we went international, for example. It's part of our blue ocean strategy. And that's positioning ourselves in a very different manner, where we can have a platform that opens opportunities for people with vulnerable communities that otherwise they cannot get. And I'll give you simple examples. The coffee shop is a very classic example to that. It offers open employment for people with disability. We're now working on looking into franchising that, and it's profit share for the clients, all right? And the idea of it is that we start pushing towards the greater community. The idea of, if you want to franchise in that coffee shop, you're going to have an impact message to it, and a positive impact, by employing people with disability. Another one is we have our travel arm, and that opens up people with disability to actually be able to travel to some of our countries that we operate. And that's most countries, by the way, because we can fly from different places, and having the flexibility to do it. And at no cost to the clients if they have the right funding from the NDIS. And NDIS doesn't fund for tickets or things like that, but we can cover that operationally to help people to actually travel and fly and explore the world. So all these initiatives is literally about going outside of the norm and the restrictions. And instead of saying government has to do it all, we're saying, no, 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 we have a role to play, and we have to back up government and put our hands together to deliver the best outcome instead of fully relying on government. And that's why we commercialize some of our work. And that's brilliant. I can tell you numerous amount of initiatives that are completely non-government funded, and supports people with disability like you and I would be supported.
Sounds like TLC is going to be growing rapidly within the next decade.
There's
Um,
plan for it, definitely.
so you mentioned the cafe in your answer just then. The cafe Frap and Cap. How's it doing, and where is it located?
So Frap and Cap is a brilliant initiative. It's one of many initiatives that we have that is sort of taking things outside of government funding, and we're doing that to support. And purely, it's going really well, by the way. It's in Bankstown head office. We also just got a cart in Melbourne that will also be launched very soon for the same concept, and we're just growing that as we go. Participants love it. They work. It's open employment. They come in. They open. They operate. Now they operate on their own, and a lot of the times, and they're taking full ownership to it.
Are there any more initiatives similar to Frap and Cap which are currently in the works?
Absolutely. So Through we just had a recent acquisition through an aged care that we'll be announcing very soon. So we've taken the reins now over an entity called McKinsey, and with that we will be providing some programs for people from the elder community, getting the expertise to support people from the younger community that have disabilities, and mixing that up into some employment pathways. For example, we opened the food and beverage arm, and the idea of it is that we targeting 70% of employment to be people from vulnerable communities, whether elderly people or people with disability. So 70% of the employees in that project are actually people that either have a disability or from the elder community.
Alright. And what message do you have for people who are considering doing volunteer work or any kind of work with TLC?
Well, we are one community, and I always say one hand can't clap. We can't do it on our own. Government can't do it on their own. We need the community, and we need people, and we need other businesses, and we need to put our hands together. It's very critical if we want to have positive impact, and impact is a big word in the work we do. Then we need to collaborate and to put our hands together, and we need people that can come out and say, "Hey, do you need a hand?" Because we always need a hand. We cannot provide support for people without having the support of the community. We are from the community for the community, so it's a very core to us to get the help of the community as much as we can.
Alright. Mr. Zaki, your information has been very informative and succinct. And on behalf of the Oz Arab Media team today, I'd like to thank you for joining us to discuss TLC's goal and generally what it does for the community. And I'd like to thank everyone who's tuned in to listen or watch this interview today.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of my experiences.
Once again, thanks on behalf of the Oz Arab Media team.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank
All
you.
the best.